Imagine you're one of the GOATs of the game, with title defenses in double figures, yet your employers decided to trade you off for a dude who's past his prime. How would you feel? Disappointed?
It was frustrating.
Or perhaps relieved because finally, you're leaving a place where you aren't appreciated.
He has the lowest selling pay-per-view in the history of the UFC in the modern era.
And you're joining hands with people who'd make you the apple of their eye. Demetrious Johnson faced a similar predicament when the UFC surprisingly decided to trade him for ONE Champion's welterweight kingpin, Ben Askren, in 2018. How did it happen? And who is the real winner 5 years later? Here's how the UFC let Demetrious Johnson walk away. For more than half a decade, Demetrious Johnson ruled the UFC flyweight division with an iron fist. Mighty Mouse won the belt in 2012 and then defended it a record-setting 11 consecutive times. The only other guy to have such a record is, yup, you guessed it, two-division UFC champion Jon Jones. So DJ, he's very much up there with the New York native as one of the greatest fighters of all time, and maybe even the greatest, because, you know, the GOAT debate is fairly subjective. Jon Jones has been one of the UFC's main guys since he joined the promotion, and he's beat some of the toughest fighters in the world. While doing so, he's made millions of dollars. The UFC even gave him numerous chances every time he effed up outside of the cage. He had his issues with drugs and the police. I hate you. Yet the UFC always had his back. Since the records and impact on the sport are similar, you would think that Johnson enjoyed the same perks and privileges as Jones, right? Well, unfortunately, that's not how it was. Johnson never received the respect that he deserved. And while you may cite a lack of high-level competition as the reason why, you can't deny that he has been at the top for as long as I can remember. I mean, most of his batchmates are either retired or washed up, but Johnson continues to rule the smaller divisions. Despite being outrageously brilliant in his UFC career, Johnson fought for $25,000 to show and $25,000 to win for the major part of his career. This guy was making shambles for how good he was. He made peanuts in his first 3 title defenses even, and a little more after that, but it was never enough. He never made millions or even $500,000. The highest he went was $380,000 in his final UFC bout against Henry Cejudo at UFC 227. I mean, that sounds like a lot of money, but when compared to other fighters at his level, oh man, that is not enough. Johnson was exceptionally skillful. He had world-class striking and exceptional grappling. He would even catch dudes in submissions mid-air, but the UFC didn't think he was marketable because he wasn't entertaining and he wasn't controversial like some of his counterparts.
You're taking everything I work for. I'm gonna fight your ass.
I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody. The double champ does what the he wants.
There's no room for nice guys in the sport anymore, I guess. So when the UFC got the opportunity to swap Johnson with the funky one, Ben Askren, the promotion didn't think twice. Dana White and co. thought Askren was way more profitable for the promotion than someone who had been his division's undisputed king for years. And we all know what happened to Ben Askren after this. One closely contested loss against Henry Cejudo, and out he went, joining a completely different setup, even though he was still very much in his prime as a fighter. Luckily, ONE Championship, they knew his worth. They immediately put him in the ONE Championship, which he went on to win convincingly by defeating the likes of Yuya Wakamatsu and Tatsumitsu Wada.
What the fuck?
And he also defeated Danny Kingad, 3 well-respected MMA fighters in Asia. And I'm sorry if I butchered those names. While DJ was taking out the best guys in his division and ONE Championship, Ben Askren, he was turning up the heat in the UFC with his trash talking and backstage altercations. Askren overcame a major scare in his first fight by surviving a vicious spell of ground and pound to score a comeback victory against Robbie Lawler in his promotional debut. Then came the fight with Jorge Masvidal. And man, it could not have ended worse for Askren. He chirped a bit too much in this fight and ended up getting knocked out cold in 5 seconds. It was a monumental moment in Masvidal's career as he rose to the heights of fame and bagged millions of dollars after years of hard work. The UFC made a lot of money as well, and Dana White could not have been happier because even though the man he brought in for Johnson wasn't producing the performances he promised, he was still making a lot of money for the organization. Askren eventually retired from MMA after suffering a loss at the hands of Damian Maia in 2019, and that was the end of his cameo at welterweight. The UFC's flyweight division also heated up following Mighty Mouse's departure, as the title changed hands multiple times in the years post-2019. Some said the competition got better in the division, but truthfully, DJ was simply too good for the guys he was fighting. And once he left, nobody was good enough to hold the belt for long. Not even Henry Cejudo, Davison Figueiredo, or Brandon Moreno. Johnson also had a hiccup when he was knocked out cold in ONE championship. Still, he bounced back in style and he finished his opponent in the same manner as the Brazilian had finished him in the first fight, with a knee straight to the face. The trilogy saw Johnson settle their rivalry once and for all and establish himself as the greatest flyweight fighter in ONE championship history. Oh, and not to mention, he also had a mixed rules fight which absolutely broke the internet. Johnson used his experience to weather the storm in Muay Thai against one of the top Muay Thai level fighters before finishing him by submission in the MMA round. Since moving to ONE championship, Johnson has garnered a lot of attention and has made a lot of fans. He's one of the biggest stars in the promotion, and he's living proof that good marketing can turn a fighter's career around. I mean, look at Colby Covington. Surely the UFC was not creative enough when it came to promoting Johnson's fights. Or maybe they just didn't want to. The UFC's focus has always been on the divisions that are full of the big boys, because that's where you see a lot of thundering punches, crushing kicks, and highlight reel knockouts. I mean, who won the trade-off? If we're talking money, all parties, including the UFC and ONE championship, as well as Johnson and Askren won. The UFC got what it was after, a fighter who could spice things up at welterweight, which was fairly boring when Askren joined the ranks. He served his purpose, he made his money, and he helped make others a ton of money, and then he dipped out. In terms of fighting, ONE championship won by a landslide. The Singapore-based promotion managed to bag the better fighters, who further strengthened their smaller divisions. For Johnson, the respect and admiration he received from promoters and rivals made up for all those years where he remained underappreciated in the UFC. Even though it was the UFC's fault that they failed to turn him into a star. Askren was the loser here because he didn't join the UFC to take part. He joined to take over. He wanted to win a UFC title and prove that his Olympic level wrestling made him the best welterweight on the planet. Unfortunately, he joined the UFC a little too late in his career, and the Masvidal fight kind of just sent his career in a spiral. He was slow, he was sloppy, and he was a little too unarmed against the gatekeepers in the welterweight Shark Tank. Imagine what would have happened if he fought top-level guys like Colby Covington or Kamaru Usman. In summary, the UFC let Demetrious Johnson walk away because the relationship with one of the most dominant champions in the promotion's history had run its course. And we're kinda glad it did, because if Johnson continued to fight in the UFC, he would still be fighting for peanuts and shambles. It's great to see him getting the love, the appreciation, and the respect that he deserves in ONE championship, where he proudly sits at the top of the flyweight food chain. Do you guys think the UFC regrets letting Demetrious Johnson go? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. If If you want to stay informed about the latest world of mixed martial arts, also I document my journey with jiu-jitsu on here. Make sure to subscribe to this channel, hit the notification bell. Thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.